Siguiendo el formato que propuso el Congreso, voy a hablar un poco del
I'll talk a little bit about the challenge with which I've found
disciplina,
myself in
cuál fue la
this area.
solución que se
What was
adoptó,
the
cuáles
solution
fueron
that
las
we
lecciones
adopted?
aprendidas,
What were the
algunas
lessons we
conclusiones
learned? Some of the conclusions,
finalmente, supongo
and
que sobre el final un
finally,
espacio
I
de
suppose,
preguntas y
around the
respuestas.
end, a session of questions and answers.
Una aclaración primero que nada, esta no es
First
una
of all,
clase teórica de
clarification,
property
this
management, no
isn't
es
a
mi idea
historical
hacer
class on
compartir
property management. It's not my idea
interactuar
to
una clase de property management.
speak about
Lo
property
que sí
management.
es
What it
compartir mi experiencia
is
personal
share my
después de
personal experience
20 años en real
in
estate en
20
McDonald's
years in real estate
y
at
sobre todo el
McDonald's,
desafío de los últimos
and
años me tocó
especially the
organizar el
challenge
área
of the previous years,
sección de real
where I
estate
had
asset
to
management
specialize in the area of
para integrar esta unidad de negocio.
property management specialization.
La agenda propuesta entonces es hablar un poco de
The agenda that we
portfolio
proposed
y
is a
expansión
little bit
de nuevos
talking
locales,
about the portfolio
cuál es el
and
proceso
expansion,
central de desarrollo
what
que
the central
aplicamos en la
process is
práctica,
for development that we
cuáles son
apply
las
in practice,
tareas
and what
recomendadas
the
para
tasks
aprender a
are
optimizar ese
that are
portfolio de
recommended
locales
to optimize this
para
portfolio
lograr los tres
to
objetivos principales que
achieve the
queremos
three
tener, que son
main
el
aims,
tamaño correcto
which
del
are the
portfolio,
correct size of the
cuál es la
portfolio,
penetración óptima de ese
the
portfolio, a su
optimal
vez
penetration of
maximizar
the
las
portfolio, and also
pérdidas.
maximizing the benefits of
Debemos hablar del tema de
franchises.
asset management,
We
tratando de
also have to talk
identificar
about asset
roles y
management, about
responsabilidades,
roles and
cuáles
responsibilities,
son la
what our vision
visión y las metas que debemos tener en
and
asset
our
management,
objectives are
la
for
idea de
the
priorizar
prioritization
tareas,
of
cuáles son los factores
tasks and what the key
claves de éxito
factors
para
for success
finalmente
are.
repasar
To
preguntas
finally talk
recomendaciones.
about the
En
recommendations.
primer lugar, les cuento que
The first place I'll
comencé
talk
trabajando
about
en
how I
empresas Anillos
worked
Dorados,
for
es una empresa
a
de McDonald's,
franchise
al
that
principio
belongs to
en Argentina,
McDonald's in
donde
Argentina,
administrábamos
where
una
we would
cantidad de locales.
administer 200 locals.
Posteriormente, en el año 2007,
Later, in
corporación decide
2007, McDonald's
reinventar
Corporation
su
decides
operación
to
en Latinoamérica,
sell
participan
its
varios
actives and
interesados,
assets in Latin America
finalmente
with
para lograr
many
la
interested
empresa se queda
parties.
con la
And
operación a nivel
finally,
latinoamericano.
the operation falls into our
Pasamos
hands as a
entonces
company
de
for the whole
21
of
países
Latin
a administrar
America.
20 países.
And instead of one country, we started to
La
administer
cartera
20
pasó a
countries.
tener 2.000
And
locales en vez de 200.
from 2000
Un
franchise,
ritmo
instead
operativo
of
de más de
200,
100 locales nuevos por año.
we had to open more than
Además de todo
100
esto,
new
había
franchises a year.
inmuebles que administrar,
And there were other
oficinas en cada
properties we
país,
had to
había por lo
administer,
menos
like
una o
office
más
buildings in
oficinas
each country.
y
And
otros
in each country, there's at least one office building.
centro de distribución, centro de entrenamiento,
And distribution centers, training centers, etc.
un departamento solamente de
One of the
desarrollo de más de 100
departments
empleados,
that's
en una compañía que
has
posee
more than 100
15.000
employees,
empleados en los territorios,
had now more than 40,000
en donde
employees,
había,
in
cuando
which
nos pusimos a
there
relevar, una
were
gran diversidad de estándares,
a huge
diferentes
variety of
procesos para
standards
hacer
and different
tareas,
processes to realize the tasks,
diversa actividad o avance en el
and also
training,
diverse activity and training,
muchas oportunidades de mejorar el entrenamiento,
a lot of opportunities to
también había
improve
disparidad
training,
en
and there was
los
also
resultados
disparity
en cuanto a rentabilidad de esas
in the
actividades.
results and
Me puse a
profitability
trabajar
of
y
those
lo primero que
franchises.
hice fue
We started
partir
working,
cuál
and the
es el
first thing I
objetivo que
did
tenemos en el
was
departamento de
to look
desarrollo.
at the aim that we had here in our
Es
department.
ser el restaurante más
And as
relevante
it says
en cada
here, it's to be
mercado
the most relevant restaurant in every
para
market,
nosotros.
which was very
Partiendo de
important
ese
for us.
objetivo, digo, bueno,
And
para asset
starting from
management,
that
las metas
aim,
que nos vamos a fijar
in
son
our
las
asset
evidentes,
management, we had
alineadas a este
the three
objetivo.
objectives that were
Lo
aligned
resumo en
with
estos
this
tres.
main aim, and I'll try to
Obtener
summarize
el
all
tamaño
three.
correcto del
To
portfolio,
obtain the
lo que
right
nosotros
size of the
tenemos,
portfolio,
maximizar la rentabilidad de esos
to
activos, o sea,
maximize the
cada local
profitability of
como
those assets,
está generando un negocio.
maximize the performance,
Finalmente,
and finally,
optimizar la penetración de mercado.
optimize the
Cada
market
local le quede
penetration
cerca a cada cliente que quiere
so that
consumir
each
nuestro
logo has
La
its
principal
clients
medida de
close to the
rentabilidad que
product.
utilizamos es el ROI, que es el retorno de la inversión.
And this is the ROI formula for profitability that we use,
Para generar esa renta, y otros indicadores clásicos
and
como
other
el
indicators
valor neto y tasa interna de
like the
Una vez que nos fijamos
net
los objetivos,
actual value.
nos pusimos a relevar
And
el
other of
número
the
de locales
aims,
que teníamos.
we started doing an inventory of
Decía,
the
son 2.000
franchises we had.
locales, y cada
As I
uno
said, there are about
de locales
2,000.
que eran propios, locales
Some were
locales de
privately owned, others were leased, or franchises, different types of buildings. And we made this inventory with our main franchises. Once we did this inventory, we started looking over the contractual situation of each one of them. More or less 25 or 30% were privately owned. The rest were leased. So from those leased buildings, we wanted to review the contractual situation of each one. So what we did was study them, classify them, and look at the management necessity each one had in terms of renovations or renegotiations, especially with old leases, and also long-term strategy. For example, of one local that we consider a flagship for the country, that's very important, or strategically, we'll look at before the end of expiration of the contract, try to buy it. And sometimes it's convenient to sell, etc. Inside our long-term strategies. We also made an inventory of other properties that aren't restaurants, for example, office buildings and training centers, and put them under our administrative review. When we had the physical inventory, we started analyzing what we should do with all those franchises, how we could contribute to the business as a revenue-generating business, and how to maximize the profitability. So we started with those existing assets and doing an evaluation on them. You have to take into account that in Latin America, we started operations in 67 in Puerto Rico, the first franchise, and now we have 2,000, as I said. And in 20 different countries, they have different characteristics. For example, inflationary economies, or we found a local portfolio that we would look at the books, how they had been developed. They had a certain value. Let's say 2 billion. The company is bought in 2007 for a far lower value. And we have to look at the value that those assets need. Is it the third measure, which was most adequate, which was a revalorization of those assets? Repositionary value. How much would they cost? And we evaluated all the franchises at this reposition value. And with this, we have the starting point, which is the asset model for the business. And so we looked at the profitability of each one. Once we did that, we started a plan to try to improve each of these assets. How did we do that? Basically, reinvestments of capital, and which activities included. For example, image improvement campaigns. Over years, models and formats, fashion develop and evolve, and we try to have a modern and standardized model, and on this model, everything else works upon it. In about 5 to 7 years, which are more or less adequate. Other actions that we did to improve profitability, we extend our brand to other, for example, the Cafeteria Express, to other business inside our brand, Automac, etc. Another activity we applied were required investment, which shouldn't be maintenance because it's an investment that aggregates value adds value to the company. It tries to find the best conditions to operate and the best image possible. Other activities that we do is adequating the size of the asset to the needs of the business. Or subdimensional or oversized locals are which we try to avoid, and we try to adequate the size of the business so that each franchise could have the adequate format and the correct size. It would either involve improving the franchises, and we also have reconstruction. If the franchise was old or whatever, on the same site we would rebuild a new building with the same format. Another activity is the rotation. That means a change in demand and the client influx, which has had a negative impact on sales. When we closed that franchise that had low sales, and we reopened it in another location. So now we have the reinvestment opportunities. And with all these tools, what we focused on was maximizing the cash margin. We consider the cash margin as the basic value. We did it with two main activities. The reinvestment I talked about is generated an impact in sales, incremented sales. That means a reinvestment to improve the business, improve sales, and this adds profitability. And in this case, what we do is we take a building which we analyze to look at the reinvestment. We compare it to similar locals. If they have the same economic level, and we look at the difference in sales that it has. And we calculate percentages. After the investment, we look at the results we obtain, if the sales improved, and that's our concept. The other measure that we took to help business was to reduce costs. There are some that are asset management responsibility. I've got them listed here. Maintenance, utilities, and common costs. Of course, the main expenditure is the rent we pay for the property. So for a notion of the quantity involved, it would be around $200 million a year. We try to reduce this number. The main indicator that we analyze here is the rent as a percentage of the sales of that building, and the average rent compared to the rest of the market. And with that, we try to make an analysis to see which ones are above average or below average, and which measures we can take to control that ratio. Once we have these activities finished, we observe the evolution of each one case. And to add to the performance of the building, we look at the negative cases, the ones that are losing money. We elaborate a ranking and look at those buildings and try to reverse the process. From a real estate point of view, which measures can be taken to improve, to see if you can recover the building or either close it if it's not profitable. If the decision finally is to close it, we have the closings policy, where we see if it's our own property, and then we have one more property to administer. And if it's a leased building, we simply close the contract and terminate it. We also have a policy to try to reverse and obtain profitability. For example, renting airspace. And on the expenditures side, we have different initiatives that are, for example, renegotiating some of the rents that are too high, or other actions to reduce utilities. And with this board, what we have are all these actions in the area of asset management to optimize the cash margin. And my colleagues talked before about technology. We also have technological modules, basically to manage the annual activity plan, or another one for rents, and a third module to manage the physical assets. Okay, all this is what we call the portfolio of real estate. We also have an expansion plan for new franchises to complement this market penetration. We should try to add value with each new franchise opened. And for those means, we have a process of development that starts, first of all, analyzing the market, analyzing the socioeconomic attributes like inflation, etc. In this market, especially indicators like formality now, etc. Once we have the market studied, we go on to study the places where we could install them, and we will always have to take into account the best location possible. For example, we have locations, but ABC, the rating on depending on the location. We study the area surrounding, or which things generate traffic towards that local. Once we prioritized and selected a location and all the previous activities to the purchase, we have different analysis on profitability, etc., and investment analysis, what the operating costs would be. And with all of this, we finally proceed to sign the contract. And once we buy the building, it goes to another department. We talked about it in one of the panels. It's an adequate project for the sales level required. And we'll give it to the operating company. It can be a franchise, or it can be another type of company. And once it opens to the public, we go to the fifth stage, which is support. Okay. Once we have the portfolio management process underway, what we do is we monitor permanently the result of the portfolio. We investigate, we analyze, we study, and based on these studies, we elaborate a plan. We always have to have a plan, and the plan has different details, like plans that are for a year, or long-term, like 5 years, for example. And once we have this plan and it's been approved, we go to the execution phase in the whole process. Executing means looking for the best locations, scouting for real estate, and looking for the best options for the location. And after the execution, we have monitoring. Now, to follow this result of our investment, and to track it, the results we were promised in the previous evaluations, or we have to compare if they're better or worse. Some of the activities to optimize this portfolio are reinvestment, requiring investment, to maintain the value of a building, for example, just for the brand image and working adequately. Another activity would be sales, just sell some of the franchises, because franchises often operate better than the company. Also close those that are losing money. And finally, we have to look at the expanding process. The expansion is one of the tools that should be, for the portfolio, one of the most important ones. And this is an example of a classification we can make to detect which are the locals, where they're located, and where we can see the axes. We look at the ones that have a higher revenue or higher losses, and we look at the profitability and the higher margin. And we look at those locals that are ranked this way, and we can see that those blank cells are confidential data. But this mental scheme helps us identify which locals are earning money, which ones are losing it, and which ones are in between. Look at the best results, and we have to look at them to see if we can improve sales even further. And we have the acceptable franchises. And in yellow, we can see the rest of the franchises, which is the great majority. And we'll look at the reinvestments we do for maintenance that may be required. And orange would be more or less the locals that are at risk. And we have to look at to see if we can refloat them and recover those businesses. Apart from this analysis, we can do another intersection where we can see the per capita sale per year. Each franchise, looking at the target demographic, selling hamburgers. And underneath, we can see the density of McDonald's per 100,000 inhabitants. Combining both numbers, we can locate the mini markets. There's a group of McDonald's with similar attributes to the other ones. Once we locate those buildings, we can look at the average number, and it's this straight line, which is the correlation between the ones that are underneath the line and those that are above average. Low profitability locals are, we can try to take actions to put it on top of the line. And from this same graphic, we look at the density average, and we'll look at the markets penetrated and the low density or low penetration markets. With these 4 quadrants, we can define the sector that's with high density, mini markets with low and higher density, low sales and low density, and the worst scenario possible, a lot of buildings that sell not enough. And here's a strategy. Where, for example, in the blue quadrant, what we recommend is expansion, so we can penetrate the market. We're in the red one, the worst one. What we have to do with those franchises is to take actions to increase sales and put it in another quadrant. Or if not, we just have to reduce participation and close some of the locals. So the purpose is to always get to the blue quadrant. Finally, with all of this information, we can elaborate the strategic plan I was talking about before. It's a vision of 5 years, a long-term plan, where different disciplines participate actively, and they combine the different perspectives that we take. The financial, competitive perspective. We want to compete, we want our market share, we want profitability. With this combination, we do our vision plan. This vision plan requires to scout all of the different buildings, and then we can assign the capex with the aim of increasing customers. Also increasing the frequency of the customer visits, and this increases our market share, and this of course facilitates our profitability. Once we have the whole portfolio organized, we can think about expansion. This is a basic model, a very simple method of thinking about expansion. We'll look at a city map with the locations of all our McDonald's franchises. And as you can see in pink, it's the influence area of each restaurant. The white areas are the gaps, where there are no McDonald's, and there could be a sale attractiveness. And based on this, on the gaps, we look at the best opportunities. We choose focal points with the best possible location, and then we study them in detail, and we prioritize. For example, we focus on this sector. We select a focal point where we have different interaction scenarios. And we analyze for each one which location would have the best results. Simplifying the process, we can see this is pre-selected, the Yorktown Center area of influence. And we're trying, of course, not to steal sales from other restaurants. And finally, we can repeat this process with each of the other gaps, and then we can prioritize which market we want to reach. And that way we can elaborate our strategic plan for expansion once the portfolio is optimized. This is a simple model of what we do every day to optimize a portfolio of real estate. So what are the lessons we learn? First of all, the benchmark. We take the best practices from each unit and we standardize. As I said, from different countries, there's some with the best practices, and we take those and we improve them, we standardize them, and apply them on the level of each country. Another recommendation that we talked about on the stage previously is to standardizing information and measurement. Without information, we cannot act. We need excellent reports so we can take the appropriate measures. Another step on our learning curve was the different ways of approving investments. What we did, again, was relegate the best parts of each country and implement one single model. Standardizing reporting systems. Each country had a different concept of how to report, and what we did was streamline and standardize the reports, where we had to take some decisions, for example, on the currency types. It depends, for example, the currency rate exchange with dollars. And following this recommendation, we used business intelligence tools to make the most dynamical reports possible. It's also recommended to have reference rate for each country with the situation, economic, inflation, political situation in each country. So to have this rate that can be consolidated at a company level, we have each country with a capital cost. That's why we use the WACC rate. Finally, and also very important, is to train and capacitate the employees and staff. So we make a lot of effort to have management positions, especially highly trained. We have McDonald's University in Sao Paulo, which would be the McDonald's University for the whole of South America. We already have 2 courses, one basic and one advanced, where we teach all of the skills needed for management. And finally, to work with a plan. We always have to have a plan. And not only have it, but also execute it. We can't just have it, we have to execute it. And for what? So that we can contribute and the assets can shine. We'll have Q&A later. So for now, thank you very much.